Newscast tonight. The two Koreas agreed to coordinate an array of events and activities, from jointly holding cultural events prior to the Winter Olympics, Pyongyang sending journalists and performers to the Games, and above all, marching together holding a unified flag. South Korea's central bank raises the nation's growth forecast for 2018 based on strong exports and improving consumption, while keeping its key rate steady. And just in time to welcome visitors from around the world for the Winter Olympics, a major upgrade to the nation's main gateway, a new passenger terminal begins operation. NEWSCENTER begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, coming to you live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Cha. The two Koreas agreed to walk in together under one flag at the 2018 Winter Olympics, another gesture of reconciliation. The women's ice hockey teams of both sides will compete at the Global Games, donning the same uniform. Kim Young-gil starts us off with what could be a solid turning point in inter-Korean relations.
The two Koreas have decided to jointly enter the opening ceremony as one team at next month's Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. Both South and North Korean delegations will hold the unified Korean flag, which shows the Korean peninsula as they jointly march in. In addition, a joint women's ice hockey team will be formed, and the details of this decision will be ironed out with the International Olympic Committee.
North Korea will send a cheering squad of 230 people to the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, and they will cheer for both the South and North Korean teams. South and North Korean cheering squads will also do joint performances.
The North will also send a 30-member taekwondo team to perform in Pyeongchang and the South Korean capital of Seoul, with the dates yet to be announced. North Korea also agreed to send a group of journalists, while South Korea agreed to provide support in their coverage of the Games.
The North Korean delegation of athletes will arrive in South Korea on February 1st, while the cheering squad, taekwondo demonstration team and journalists will do so on February 7th. They will all use the Gyeongui Line train route as a means of transportation to get into South Korea.
Prior to the Games, Seoul will send an inspection team on January 23rd to the 25th, while Pyongyang will send an on-site inspection team on January 25th through the 27th. This comes as the two Koreas agree to jointly prepare and hold cultural events in North Korea's Mount Kumgang resort before the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, as well as conduct joint training among ski athletes at the Masikryong Ski Resort in North Korea. As for the Paralympic Games in Pyeongchang, the North will send representatives, athletes, cheering squad, art performers, and journalists, totaling 150 people. Further details are expected to be discussed through the Inter-Korean communication channel in Panmunjom. Now the two Koreas plan to discuss the results of Wednesday's talks with the International Olympic Committee on Saturday, January 20th in Lausanne, Switzerland. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Joint cultural events at Mount Kumgang Resort that's been shut down in 2008. Seoul and Pyongyang's athletes training together at a ski resort up north. Lee Jung-yeon reads into the offers that could reflect the Hermit Kingdom's eagerness to play a more active role than a passive recipient of peace offerings.
In yet another round of talks Wednesday, South and North Korea settled several issues related to the upcoming Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, agreeing to have some Olympics-related activities take place in the North. These include joint cultural events at the Mount Kumgang Resort and joint ski training for athletes at the North's Masikryong Ski Resort. The ski resort is one of the regime's most heavily promoted tourist destinations, estimated to have cost some $35 million to build. This has led to criticism that the North is taking advantage of South Korea to promote its facilities. Experts say, however, that this is not a concern.
The South Korean government is aware that the joint ski training at Masikryong Resort is, in a way, doing a favor for the North. But it's their way of drawing the regime to the discussion table because the goal is to hold a peaceful Olympics. In this regard, the talks can be considered successful.
The other location, Mount Kumgang, is an attraction the regime hopes to reopen after it was shut down in 2008 when a South Korean tourist was shot by a North Korean soldier. The expert adds that holding joint cultural events at Mount Kumgang could benefit both parties.
The South Korean government wants inter-Korean family reunions, which would most likely take place at Mount Kumgang. North Korea wants to reopen it as a tourist destination, so it works out for both of them.
The expert adds that when the Pyeongchang Winter Olympic torch arrives at its final northernmost destination, Gosong in Gangwon-do Province, there's a chance that the torch could pass through North Korea for a symbolic or dramatic effect. Lee Jung-yeon, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Vice Defense and Foreign Ministers of South Korea and the United States held talks in Washington. Among other things, America's security commitment to Seoul and close coordination on dialogue with Pyongyang were reaffirmed. Oh Jung-hee fills us in. What was discussed?
Despite the current thaw in relations between the two Koreas, there will be no let-up in the U.S. show of force on the Korean Peninsula and in Northeast Asia. That's what the senior defense and foreign affairs officials of South Korea and the U.S. agreed upon on Wednesday at a 2+2 meeting in Washington. It was the second meeting of the Extended Deterrence Strategy and Consultation Group involving Seoul's Vice Defense Minister Seo Ju-seok and Vice Foreign Minister Im Sung-nam and their American counterparts David Trachtenberg and Thomas Shannon. The U.S. officials reaffirmed Washington's firm security commitment to South Korea using all categories of its military capabilities. The U.S. will also continue the rotational deployment of its strategic assets to South Korea and other areas, as long as North Korea's nuclear and missile programs threaten the region. They agreed on peacefully and diplomatically solving the North Korea issue through an unwavering deterrence on Pyongyang, and South Korea promised to closely communicate with the U.S. on its ongoing talks with North Korea. The meeting was regularized in summit talks last June and was held for the first time in September. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson says North Korean sanctions are really beginning to show effect. Citing intel sources, the top diplomat expressed confidence that Pyongyang and Washington could meet at the negotiating table soon. Park Hyo-jun shares with us his remarks.
U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said international sanctions are really starting to hurt North Korea. The statement came at an event with former top diplomat Condoleezza Rice at Stanford University on Wednesday.
We're getting a lot of evidence that these sanctions are really starting to hurt.
He expressed confidence that continued economic pressure will eventually bring North Korea to the negotiating table with the United States and minimize the need for military action. While giving South Korean President Moon Jae-in credit for Pyongyang's recent openness to dialogue, Tillerson also praised China for its unprecedented effort in pressuring North Korea despite Beijing's long history of supporting Pyongyang.
But the Chinese have leaned in hard on the North Koreans to the point part of this approach was to help the Chinese come to the realizations that North Korea for the last 50, 60 years may have been an asset to you. They're now a liability to you.
But the same could not be said for Russia, which Tillerson said was a slightly different issue. China and Russia are both obliged to comply with UN Security Council's resolutions, including the implementation of the toughest set of sanctions to date against North Korea. On this issue, U.S. President Donald Trump commended Beijing for largely complying with international sanctions, but criticized Moscow for actually helping the regime skirt those measures aimed at reining in Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions. Trump has been accusing Russia of helping North Korea get supplies needed for the development of its ballistic missiles and follows allegations from U.S. officials that Russia has been lax in its implementation of UN Security Council sanctions. Park Hyo-jun, Arirang News.
A day after ex-President Lee Myung-bak denounced the prosecution's investigation into his former aides as a, quote, political retaliation, President Moon Jae-in expressed his indignation using unusually strong emotion-charged words.
President Moon Jae-in said he cannot hide his anger over the fact that former President Lee Myung-bak talked about political retaliation while directly mentioning the death of the late former President Roh Moo-hyun.
No committed suicide in 2009 during a corruption probe into his family and age. His associates called it a result of political revenge. The Cheongwade spokesperson added Yi's accusation that the presidential office is using its influence on the prosecution is, quote, an insult to the government and something a former leader should not have said. When asked about concerns the president's infuriation could widen the political gap, an anonymous Blue House official said unconditional patience is not always a virtue and sometimes to achieve unity, sending out an accurate message is also necessary. The People's Party and the Bareun Party officially announced plans to merge. A joint press conference was held to explain the reason behind their decision and their political vision going forward. Kim Min-ji has the latest from the domestic political arena.
In a surprise press conference Thursday, the chairs of the center-left People's Party and the center-right Bareun Party announced they're planning to form a new party, putting an end to months of will they or won't they. It comes just weeks after the two minor parties launched a joint committee to act as a bridge for integration.
The People's Party and the Bareun Party will come together to create a new unified reformist party that will pave the way for a better world and a hopeful future. As the heads of the new parties, we will overcome all difficulties and put every effort for the new party's success.
They said the new party will bring together reform-minded conservatives and rational centrists to meet the people's aspiration for political reform. The new party will have two goals, they said: to work for the people and to create a brighter future for the country. They also vowed to break away from the old politics, stepping aside from ideology and factionalism, and to write a new chapter in Korea's politics. They hope to position the party as an alternative to the two major parties, the ruling Democratic Party of Korea and the main opposition Liberty Korea Party. The new party will make security its top priority to deal with the North Korea nuclear issue based on a strong South Korea-U.S. alliance. On the economic front, they vowed to foster a free and fair market economy to achieve growth and job creation. The merger will create a party with 48 lawmakers if all of them agree to get on board, making them the third largest party in the National Assembly. They will also have two former presidential candidates in their ranks. However, there are opponents of the merger in both parties. Recently, the Bareun Party was dealt with a blow when three of its key lawmakers said they will quit and join the main conservative party. Dissenters within the People's Party have also said the merger will obscure their political identity.
The merger by An Cheol-soo and Yoo Seung-min, who both face impending splits in their parties, will kill off the multi-party system and lead to a system of endless collusion in Korean politics.
The People's Party will be holding a national convention next month to make a final decision on the merger, but it remains to be seen if and how those in favor of it will be able to convince the skeptics, with just over 2 weeks to go. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The nation's central bank raised its growth forecast for the local economy. As for the key interest rate, it was widely expected. The Bank of Korea left it untouched. Kim Hye-sung looks beyond the numbers.
The Bank of Korea raised its growth forecast for the local economy for 2018 to 3%, up 0.1 of a percentage point from its previous projection made in October.
Global economic growth has accelerated in both advanced and emerging economies. Korea's domestic economy is expected to continue its solid growth on the back of strong exports and improving consumption, although investment has somewhat slowed.
The central bank lowered its consumer price projection by 0.1 percentage points to 1.7%. It says there are upside and downside risks for inflation. Rising global oil prices are pushing prices up, while the Korean won's rise against the U.S. dollar to its strongest level in more than 3 years is starting to weigh on import costs. With December's core inflation rate below the bank's target of 2% and household debt still growing, the BOK kept its benchmark interest rate unchanged at 1.5% Thursday. This freeze comes after the bank's first rate hike in over 6 years in November.
The rate freeze this month was widely expected. For one thing, inflationary pressure has eased, but also the bank is waiting to see what other countries do with their monetary easing policies before making a move. The fact that Governor Lee Ju-yeol's term is set to end this March was also a factor.
Experts say the central bank is likely to raise rates gradually this year, sometime in the second quarter or later, after policymakers have had more time to assess the impact of the first increase and get clearer signals on the inflation rate. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Korea's Labor and Startup Ministries briefed the Prime Minister on the overall plans for this year. It includes increasing the number of jobs as well as small and mid-sized firms. Kim Ji-yeon sheds light on their priorities.
5 government offices, including the Ministry of Employment and Labor and the Ministry of SMEs and Startups, have outlined their action plans for the year to Prime Minister Lee Na-kyun. In a briefing Thursday, the officials said their focus will be on bolstering the government's growth initiatives to boost quality of life and achieve an income level of $30,000 per capita. The ministries also pledged to work toward increasing the number of small and medium-sized businesses to help create new jobs.
We'll expand the $2.8 billion job creation fund for small businesses with 30 employees or less in order to reduce their burden from the government's minimum wage increase this year.
Other steps include bridging the income and inequality gap between regular employees and subcontractors, increasing the number of quality jobs, and strengthening monitoring of employers to ensure they carry out this year's minimum wage increase. To do that, the Labor Ministry says it'll unveil a series of measures this year, including providing support to boost youth employment rates, as well as promote the use of paid maternity leave. The Health Ministry says it'll raise the monthly basic pension fund and increase support for those in the low-income bracket, the disabled, and the elderly. The Agriculture Ministry says it aims to boost the number of jobs in the agricultural sector to 170,000 by 2022 through increased convergence with advanced IT and biotech, such as smart farms. The Oceans and Fisheries Ministry says it aims to boost the number of jobs and revitalize the country's shipping and shipbuilding industry through massive infrastructure policies to open up an era where annual income of fisheries households surpasses $46,700. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Round 2 of Seoul and Washington's trade discussions is coming up soon. Currently, Korea's Trade Ministry is working to decipher President Trump's recent remarks on the matter. Kim Mo-kyun has the full story.
U.S. President Donald Trump has accused South Korea of dumping washing machines in the United States. Trump made the statement in an interview with Reuters at the White House on Wednesday, adding that South Korea is destroying American industry, which he said once created good jobs. His remarks could mean a lot to the Korean firms waiting for the American leader to make his decision on U.S. safeguard measures against imported Korean washing machines. The U.S. International Trade Commission unanimously recommended that the U.S. impose a tariff rate quota on imports, which would come into effect after a certain number of foreign products enter the American market. President Trump has until February 2nd to decide whether to approve the recommendation. An industry expert said that dumping is a much more complicated issue than safeguarding, and that the possibility of imported Korean washing machines being classified as being dumped is low. Regarding the renegotiation of the Chorus FTA, he said Trump's remarks do not seem to have a hidden meaning.
The real intention of President Trump's remarks is still not clear yet. Though I think the American leader wanted to highlight how Korean washing machines affected employment in the U.S., the message doesn't seem to have any specific economic or legal implications to it.
Korea's Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy said that it is working to look for clues within the remarks, but added that it could be too early to determine how Trump's comments would reflect his decision on trade with Korea. The ministry added that with Trump's one-year anniversary in his post just around the corner, he could deliver a message on strengthening U.S. trade protection policies soon. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
Incheon International Airport, one of the region's biggest hubs, now has a state-of-the-art second terminal. The upgrade comes just in time for the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. Our Cha Sang-mi was there on the first day of its operation to show us what makes it unique.
Korea's main gateway, Incheon International Airport, began operations at its brand new second terminal Thursday morning, with a flight arriving before dawn from Manila. Now flying out of Terminal 2 are 4 SkyTeam airlines, including Korean Air. T2 is designed to be a smart facility, with its own check-in, customs, immigration, and boarding gates, all using cutting-edge technology.
It's so convenient. The self-check-in, closed parking lots, and all the amenities in the terminal are just all perfect.
The self-check-in, immigration, and bag drop systems enable passengers to be ready for boarding in half an hour. The terminal also provides a range of recreational and resting spaces, making it much more passenger-friendly.
I think it's really nice that the terminal shows off a lot of cultural aspects of Korea. It's way more vibrant than Terminal 1.
One of the most convenient things is the terminal's all-inclusive transportation center, with buses, trains, and short-term parking.
We have built an all-inclusive transportation center at Terminal 2 that connects users to buses, subways, and KTX trains from indoors. Passengers can take public transportation conveniently without having to leave the terminal.
Directions to the airport have also changed, which could confuse some airport users. But if passengers arrive at the wrong terminal, there are shuttle buses that connect the two terminals free of charge.
So I was in Terminal 1, and I sat there for about 45 minutes. And I went up to the desk. I asked one of the people to help out, and she directed me to Gate 8, which there was a shuttle there, and it took about 15 minutes just to get here.
And they can ask for an I'm late card at the information desk, which will give them priority in customs after checking in at the right terminal.
Terminal 2 has opened just in time for the upcoming Pyeongchang Olympics, which will begin in 3 weeks. And the new terminal will help the airport in its push to be a top global air hub long after the sporting event. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
The 2018 Pyeongchang Paralympic Games are also fast approaching. A special event was held in Dongdaemun to mark 50 days to go before the sporting celebrations begin. According to our Lee Ji-won, one particular VIP captured everyone's attention.
Dear all, true completion of the Olympics comes with the successful hosting of the Paralympics. And the success of the Paralympics depends on your interest, especially when it comes to ticket purchases.
First Lady Kim Jong-suk quoted the International Olympic Committee's words at the G-50 Pyeongchang Paralympic celebration in Central Seoul on Thursday. The Pyeongchang Olympics and Paralympics Organizing Committee President Lee Hee-bum, the Vice Culture Minister No Tae-gang, and some 200 Paralympic athletes, as well as families and volunteers, took part in the event. The upcoming 2018 Paralympics is expected to be the biggest Paralympics in history, with a total of 2,500 athletes and delegates from some 50 countries. And North Korea has also confirmed its participation at the Winter Paralympics for the first time. But despite such efforts, ticket sales for the Games have been rather slow, standing at just over 67% of the target of 220,000 tickets as of January 17th. And to further boost sales, the First Lady herself bought 2 tickets for the South Korean men's ice hockey match against the Czech Republic on March 11th. Also at Thursday's event, the medals for the Paralympics Games were unveiled to the public. Their designer Lee Seok-gu explained that the medals have horizontal lines, unlike the Olympics medals, which have diagonal lines, to emphasize the Paralympics values of equality. The 2018 Paralympics tickets can be bought at the Paralympics website and at Seoul and Gangneung City Halls, as well as at other venues and various train stations. The Pyeongchang 2018 Paralympics Winter Games runs from March 9th to March 18th. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now the concentration of the dust in the central region has come down and the ultrafine dust advisory in Seoul has been lifted. But throughout the night, the dust levels will stay bad in the rest of the country. And tomorrow, the central region will bounce back up to unhealthy conditions along with the remaining regions. Even on the weekend, there won't be any changes in the atmosphere to clear the dust, so try not to plan any activities outside. And tonight, the cold air is expected to flow in from the north, bringing down the temperatures tomorrow. Now, Seoul begins at -4 degrees Celsius. Daegu and Busan will start at -3 and 2 degrees. But into the day, the temperatures will get a bit of a boost up to 5 degrees for Seoul, while Gwangju and Busan hits up to 8 and 11 degrees. And similar mild conditions are expected to linger throughout the weekend, but next week is going to turn freezing cold again. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all for tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Wherever you may be tuning in from, thank you for watching.